Hello there, beautiful teachers, and welcome to this week's Vibrant Music Teacher Chat. This is the weekly show here on YouTube live or on the replay if that's how you're watching it, where we talk about the latest goings on in the music teaching industry. We do some fun musical warm-ups together, and we have a special topic each week, which we're going to discuss. So today we're talking about Halloween piano parties because I'm planning a piano party for my students right now. And at the end, I do save some time for questions. So if you have a question throughout today, even if you're watching on the replay, and you want to type it in the comments, I'll be happy to get back to you. Just start with the word question if you're watching live so that I can make sure to come back to all of those at the end. It just helps me to catch them all because I can search then for the word question. Before we get to our main topic of the day, the Halloween piano party, we are going to do our warm-ups together, starting with some singing. Alright, so we're going to do some salsa singing. I've decided to move us up a level. I hope you'll be okay with that. So we are going to do the Serenader number 1 today. These are not hard, but some of them do move quite fast, so they can be challenging for students. The idea of these is that we sing them in solfa. So I sing this as do, do, re, for example. And this level only uses the pentatonic scale. So that's do, re, mi, so, la. Now, quick note. I am always talking in movable do solfa. So do is not always C, even though it is right here. I move my solfa around. That's the type of solfa that I use. It's not fixed do, which is another method of note naming. So I use solfa. If you're not familiar with solfa, you don't want to do it that way, just hum it. Come up with your own silly words, or say la 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 la, or do 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 do. It doesn't matter. Whatever you do sing along. I myself will not be singing along just because of audio issues, but I will do the hand signs or attempt to do them in time with the track. So there's going to be a track. It's going to start with the tonic chord and the starting note. And then there will be one bar, one measure in 4/4 before it actually starts, and then try and sing along. Do it. Don't just watch me. Do it. Oh, whoops, sorry. You don't have to finish with the jazz hands, that's just me being silly. Okay, now the faster version. Sing along. If you didn't do it last time, try it this time. I can't help it. It just, when it does the broken chord there at the end, I have to do that. Okay, that was your solfa warm-up. I hope it got your voice going. We're going to get your rhythm senses going next. So this is a Rhythm Railroad card. If you haven't seen one before, you just do the action as it comes up for the rhythm. So the dark blue is 2 hands tapping on your legs, on a surface of any kind. The orange is shoulders, tap your shoulders. The green is tap your foot, pretty obviously, and then the heart, you can do this. Some of my students like to do this because they're super cutesy. That's fine by me. Okay, so we're not going to practice. We're just going to go for the slow track, and then we'll try the fast one. Here we go. Okay, let's try the faster version. Oh, sorry. Nice. I did want to mention on those ones as well, because we had a question about it from a member recently. She was asking about using these in group classes and could she print it bigger. So we do have printable book versions of these, but I would only use those with one student. Honestly, for a big group, I think the best way is to have a screen. So I actually have a second monitor in my studio. If you can set that up, you can get them super cheap secondhand. And that, for a group, even of 2 or 3 people, is way more convenient than looking at separate books because you can point and you're referencing the same thing. So I love these screen versions for that. Okay, so we're talking today about Halloween piano parties, or generally performance opportunities that aren't quite like concerts. So that's what I'm planning for my students at the moment. I'm planning a Halloween version. Now, I'm calling it a Samhain social, but I will have to explain that to you, so I haven't put it in the title or the description, because Samhain is actually the Irish holiday that Halloween is basically based on, although some other cultures have bits in there as well. It's kind of a melting pot Halloween. But Samhain is basically the original Celtic version, and so I'm calling it a Samhain social just because my students will know the word Samhain because everyone learns Irish in school. So yeah, that's the name of it, but let me tell you what it is, and then I'll tell you the nitty-gritty of how I'm organizing it. And if any of this is unclear, please do ask me in the chat. So I decided to add this in. First of all, I'll give you the why. I decided to add this into my schedule this year, and uncharacteristically, I did it quite last minute. I didn't plan this before the year started. I didn't put it in our calendar that I made at the end of the last academic year, like in April, May of last year, which I normally would with most events. But this is where we need some flexibility, right? We can't be too rigid. And like with lesson planning, we make the plan, but that doesn't mean we don't alter it when things come up and we have to serve our community. So the thing that came up for me, I started back in September, and I had this in the back of my head for a while, but it started to become more and more clear to me that most of my students who I have now, who have been learning for several years, are less confident than they would have been in the past. So what I mean is a student who's been learning now for 3 years, let's say, if they, in 2018, when I was teaching a student who had been learning for 3 years, they would have been a more confident performer. And the same goes for a student who was learning for 8 years at that stage. So I was just finding with my more experienced students in particular, the pandemic had really affected their overall performance anxiety. I don't know if that's the same for you, but that's what I was getting, at least off several students of mine. And I don't want that for them. So we normally do 2 performances every year. We do a more intimate, small concert that's just here in my living room, which is sort of a largish living room. So it's like 20, 25 people in the audience. And then we do a bigger one that's like everyone all together in a school hall or a venue like that at the end of the year. And those were already in my calendar, but I was just feeling like that's not enough. That still feels like the event is going to be too big of a deal when you do it, right? So the performance anxiety is not going to be relieved by doing 2 concerts a year. They're just too infrequent. And these students need more practice with getting over their nerves. So I decided to add this in. Now, I'm not saying that 3 concerts in a year is this massive difference from 2, but I wanted to add something. I wanted to add an extra event, and then I'm looking into festivals possibly for the second term or the second semester, and maybe trying to find more performance opportunities along the way. So we're adding this in. Now, this is going to be similar to what I did for a Christmas party that was directly before the pandemic. So December of 2019, I did a Christmas performance. Winter, whatever, but most people here would want to play Christmas music. So that's largely what it ends up being. And we did this as a party. So it was very different to a concert. Even the small concerts that I do here, everyone sits down in an audience and watches as each student performs, right? It's a typical sort of concert recital format. These parties are different. What I'm trying to recreate here is a gig environment, or like an actual gig that they would get maybe when they're older to play a fancy holiday party, something like that. So people are milling around. Maybe they're stopping to listen to you. Maybe they're playing games over there. Maybe they're eating cookies right beside you. Maybe they're going to get some juice and they're nowhere near you. Maybe they're chatting with each other loudly or softly. It's unpredictable. So this is harder for some students and easier for others in terms of a performance environment. But the variety is what I want to provide. For some students, it's going to make them more nervous because they're going to have distractions. But that's actually really good practice, because even in regular concerts, occasionally a baby cries or something happens, right? So for those students, this is beneficial in that way. And then for other students, everyone sitting down and watching you is what feels intense. That's what gives them the nerves. Not for everyone, but for some, that is the root of it, is everyone is watching me and they can feel the eyes on the back of their head, right? So this gives them a much more casual environment. They're playing and people may or may not be listening to them. They can just play. So that's the idea behind these kinds of parties. Now, I've only done one before, and that was a Christmas one, and this is going to be a Halloween one. I am going to make some changes based on what I learned from the first one, even though it was almost 3 years ago. But that's roughly what it looks like. So the basic idea is that students come, and they don't all come at once. They come periodically, and there's not like a set time that they're there for, but there's a set arrival time so that it's staggered. And then there's a set list, or the student performance list, on the side of the piano. I literally just print out the order of the names. I don't even print the pieces beside them. Print out the order of the names and put that on the side of the piano so that myself and parents and the other teachers can refer to it easily. And then we have them go in that order. Now, if there's a break between students playing, I'm not fussed. Okay? So it's just about going up to that student and saying, hey, you're up next. And they go over and play after the last student. There'll be some times when there's no music, and sometimes when it flows right into the next one. Does that make sense? So it's very informal. That doesn't mean it's easier to plan. It honestly is just as much work, I would say, as a regular concert, and I'll explain why. First, let's get to the logistics, because we've got these elements going on. So what I ended up doing is I sent out a Google form. First, there were 2 Google forms, right? So the first one I sent out to parents and I said, okay, please fill this out if you'd be at all interested, and let me know which dates would work for you. So I gave them an option. I gave them 4 options, all of which worked for me. Okay, so you don't give them options that you can't do. But I gave them 4 options that would work for me. I gave them 2 different Saturday options and 1 Sunday option. And a Friday evening. So I gave those out, and I just went with the highest vote. So I waited a while, reminded them to fill it in, then went with the highest votes to pick our date. So it ended up being the weekend before Halloween weekend. Worked out better. So that is the 22nd, and it's going to be a Saturday afternoon. So I had my date, but I still needed to go back to everyone and say, okay, now tell me if you're coming, because the people who didn't vote for that date, I'm not like sifting through and identifying them. It wouldn't have worked that way. So I had to go back again and say, okay, great, just 1 more form. I promise this is the last thing about this event. Please fill this out and let me know if you're coming, and if you are, whether you have a time preference. So they just answered the 2 questions there. Because it's a Google form, it works on their phone or whatever, and it's 2 questions, it is very quick for them to fill in. 3 if you include their email address, but that's probably auto-filled, right? So they just say yes or no if they can make it, and then the top answer was all good for the times, and then 3 p.m, 3:30, 4 p.m, 4:30, 5. Because that's the window which we're holding it across. So some people picked one of the times. That's fine, I'll honor that. And then lots of people, about 50%, didn't pick a time. They said they're all good, doesn't matter. So then I get to shuffle those people in to make it all balance out. Okay? So that I have some people arriving at 3, then another group arriving at 3:30, and etc. on the half hour until 5. So the idea of that is that the people who arrive at 3 Some of them won't stay that long at all, because the kids will be tired or whatever. They're just not interested in the games and other things that are going on. Some will stay for about 45 minutes, an hour. I haven't found that families stay longer than that. This is based on my one experience of last time. Last time, one of the things I do think was a bit of a mistake on my part was I did space it out too much. So I was too worried about there being too many people here at once, and I should have made it tighter. So this time I have gone a little bit more dense. Bearing in mind COVID and things, I'm not going to make it so that my house is packed, but a little bit more dense. So students will arrive on the half hour with their parents, and then they'll come in and there'll be games, there'll be juice and biscuits. Biscuits are cookies, if you're not aware of what that means over here. And there will be the piano for them to play at when it's their turn. So that's the basic structure of it. And my parents have now filled out the form. So I have a list of who's coming. I've either left them with the time they chose or given them a time if they didn't choose one. My next stage, I'm about 3 weeks out now, a little bit less, right? So 2.5 weeks out. I'm now going to today email them and tell them their time. So no matter whether they chose or I chose, doesn't matter. I'll go back to them. I'll tell them their time, what they need to bring. So they're welcome to wear their Halloween costume, but they don't have to. And that they just have to make sure that they have the book that they're playing from if they're reading a piece. Okay, so that reminder will go out now. And then a few days before the event, I will send almost the same email again, just to say, hey, it's at this time. Here's what you need to bring. Halloween costumes welcome. Make sure you have your piano book if you're playing from a book. Okay, so that's sort of the logistical side. Now, the student preparation is what we'll look at next. What are they going to play? Well, this is the part that is a lot more casual. The preparation for me is maybe not more casual, but for the students it is. They're just with their teacher this week, so we're only 3 weeks out and they're only picking them now, okay? That shows you how relaxed it kind of is. This week with their teacher, they will decide what they're going to play. I don't care if the songs overlap with another student. I don't mind if they play one piece or two. That's up to them. And they can alter their piece, whatever. It has to be something they already know how to play, that they're already confident with, so that's where the teacher will step in. If they choose a new piece, that's not happening. But they can play anything that they already know. And if they want to put a Halloweeny twist on it, their teacher will help them, transpose it into minor or add some sforzato or things like that. So we set the pieces this week. Next week, really important step is that we ask them, okay, what are you playing for the Halloween party? And this is, of course, only the students who are participating. If they're not, we just ignore it. But next week, we need to ask them, what are you playing for the Halloween party? Hopefully they can tell us. If they can't, which does happen a lot, they just can't remember what we said the previous week, we need to really drill that into them because they need to know what they're playing. Now, we don't care if they actually play what they say they're going to play or if they just show up and play something else, that's fine. But they will be more confident if they know what they're going to play. So that's really what it's about over the next 2 weeks. Obviously getting them to play that for us. But it's not the usual performance preparation that we would do where we're working on walking up and bowing and playing beautifully and really refining that performance. It's just about playing something that you know quite well. Okay, that's the student side. Then we have the other stuff I need to get ready. So there's kind of 3 categories here, since it's Halloween one. So there's the activities for them to do while they're here. There's 4 categories, kind of. It's the activities for them to do while they're here. There is the decorations. There's the snacks and drinks. And then there's my own decoration, my costume. So those are the 4 things we've left to talk about. Okay, so I'll start with the biggest one, which is the games and activities. So I learned a lot from doing the Christmas party the last time. And there is a blog post about that, by the way, if you want to look it up on the Colourful Keys blog. But basically the most popular game was the one where they threw beanbags through holes in a snowman. It was the ugliest snowman you have ever seen because I had all sorts of crafty mishaps with that creating that snowman. But anyway, it was the students' favourite by far. So I'm basically doing a similar one, which is like, I think it's called cornhole. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong about what you call that. the beanbag toss thing. Anyway, I'm making boxes, like cardboard boxes, into monsters. So I'm just cutting out a mouth in them and then painting on or covering them with colored paper and then painting on eyes and adding on little paper teeth in the mouth. So they just look like very silly, friendly monsters. And you're going to throw the beanbags into there. Then we're going to do pin the tail on the something or pin the something on the something. I haven't decided exactly what that's going to be. You can let me know if you want to vote on that. I'd be happy for you to. Should it be pin the stalk on the pumpkin? Pin the hat on the witch? Pin the... what else? Ghost doesn't really work because he doesn't have a thing, like a tail. It's too vague. So yeah, let me know what you think it should be. But it'll be pin the something on the something. That we did pin the tail on the treble clef last time. This time I'm just going to go Halloween. I'm not going to try and make it musical. And then we will also have a colouring station where I will have colouring sheets and just blank pieces of paper. That's what most children want, is just to draw their own thing, and that's great by me. But I will have a few colouring options as well, like colour it in sheets, as kind of a quiet corner. So those are the 3 basic activities. I did another one last time, but I think the 3 is actually enough. Then I have my decorations, so I need to make/buy lots of Halloween decorations. And the only thing I want to say about that is that I am being careful that they're very friendly Halloween decorations. I'm not doing anything remotely spooky. Not really doing skeletons. I'm more going for like silly monsters, silly looking ghosts, like ones that look like Casper more than like a real ghost. A real ghost, but whatever. Ones that look more like Casper. And pumpkins. So that's sort of the decor, but you need a lot of it to fill the space. So a lot of effort is going to go into that on my part. And then the drinks and snacks is very low effort for me. So that's where I just don't think it's worth it. I go to our local Lidl, which is, if you don't have Lidl, it's just a cheap grocery shop. I go there, I buy big cartons of juice. I already have reusable plastic cups, and I buy like a few different types of biscuits. So cookies is what you would probably call them. And I lay those out. Now, little note on the snacks. So super low maintenance. I don't bake anything. I like baking, but I don't do it for student things generally. However, if you're going to go my route and just buy cookies or biscuits or stuff like that, put out a limited amount and replenish it. Do not put out everything you have, because honestly, I have some parents who are very careful with their kids, and their kids will ask them, like, can I have a biscuit? And they'll have one, or they'll tell them how many they can have, and that's fine. And they come back to ask them if they want more. But some parents obviously take the opportunity to not look after their kids so closely, and their kid will just stand beside the plate and just... It honestly isn't super polite. I don't care about them eating sugar. I mean, that's nothing to do with me. But in terms of sharing, not super polite. But it does happen. And I understand it's tricky for the parents to keep track of their kids the whole time. So I just put out a small amount and refresh that as new batches of people arrive. So that I've kind of split it up throughout the whole time. And that it's not just a gigantic mess of nothing by the end. Then the last thing for me to get ready is my own costumes. Since it is a Halloween party and I'm inviting kids to wear costumes, me and my husband are dressing up as well. And we are going to be the sun and the moon. This was the one he wanted to go for. I was very much throwing ideas at him, and he was like, that was the one he thought worked. He wanted to be the moon. So I've made him a black cape with diamante stars on it, like just a smattering of diamantes. Like little gems. And then we're going to paint his face with the moon on it. And then I made myself a yellow dress that I would wear anyway, because I wear yellow a lot anyway, that has like gold spots on it. And then I'm going to make just a skirt that goes over the top that's in organza, which is like a partially see-through fabric, to make it more Halloween-y and dressy uppy. But I've made a dress that functions anyway. If you don't know this about me already, I do sew. So like that's just something I wanted to do. because it was fun to me. But I did want to dress up. So our costumes are very simple, just the sun and the moon, or the goddess of the sun and the god of the moon, if you prefer. Yeah, so that's the basic organization of it. Let me know what you think we should pin the something on the something, what that should be, and let me know if you have questions about how I do all of this or anything I didn't go through there. Oh, I will say one more thing. My husband is our official, unofficial, unprofessional, that's what I should say, photographer for all studio events. So he will be going around with the camera, and I'm just telling him take as many photos as you can, because I can always throw them away if they're not very good. But if he doesn't take enough, that's where it gets tricky. So he'll just be wandering around taking photos. That's his main job. And then two of the other teachers should be able to make it. There are 3 who work here. One of them probably can't make it, but the 2 of the others should be able to make it, and they will go around and help me with the cookie replenishing and nudging students who are up next and playing games with the students so that they have fun. Yeah. So, okay, it is called Cornhole. Thank you. Yeah. It's more of a kind of an American game, so I'm going to go with the American name of it. Thank you, Carrie. I hope they do. They enjoyed the last one. I have just a few, like, some were like, whatever, not in love with it. But a few of my students still are asking me about this party almost 3 years later, the Christmas one. Like, when are we going to do that again? When are we going to get to play the beanbag game again? It's like, sure, you play with beanbags other times, but they're really into it. Okay, Denise says pin the stem on the pumpkin. Oh, you said before, I think, pin the hat on the witch. Yeah, it definitely could be that. Nice, okay, I was just looking for questions specifically about the party. I think I've gone through everything. Let me know if anything was unclear to you at all. So if you have a question, I'm happy to take them now. I often get questions about this camera thing. So this is called Snap Camera. It's just a little app you can install on a Mac computer. And I chose this pumpkin theme for today because I thought it was cute. And also it kind of looks like it's part of my glasses, right, with the way it's set up. Because it's like orange anyway. And then, yeah. So anyway, thought that was fun. Okay. I'm going to search for questions. So if you have a question, do type it in now so that I can get to it before we wrap up. So, how do you manage supplemental material when assigning music for recitals? Do you give them a book for just one piece they will learn for a recital? Okay, good question. The way I handle recitals in general is that we're picking something that they would have done anyway. So I know I said, like, the difference with this Halloween one is they're just picking something they're doing anyway. That is kind of something we're doing anyway with all recitals. Just we would prepare the performance aspect to a much higher degree. But my students don't have specific recital pieces. I think my thinking on this partially comes from the fact that exams are very commonplace here, and that is what you would do for an exam, is you would have a piece that is specifically for that event and you prepare it for that event. And I think concerts should be different, at least for us. So, not that my students do exams every year, but they do have that opportunity to do that kind of experience when they want to, and when it's going to be beneficial for them. So, for concerts, they're playing something that they would already have played anyway, and then just polishing it and getting it ready for the performance. So, to come back to your question, would I give them a book that is just for one recital piece? No. I never give my students a book unless they want to learn at least 60-70% of the pieces in it. So a supplemental book is always chosen by my students. It's never just given by me. Method books, like I might just be assigning those, or like standard classical repertoire, I'm just assigning it. But for a supplemental book, I want it to be their choice. So they listen to the options in the various books and they pick their favorite book and they learn the majority of pieces in that book. If they come across one they hate, that's fine. They can veto it. But for the most part, they would do the whole book, the whole supplemental book. So that's where we're drawing from, supplemental books and method books for the recital. Denise, do you have an idea of how many will be there during each half hour? Meaning how many will be scheduled to be playing during each half hour? Yeah, okay. So here's the sort of guide I'll give you, Denise, which is I've actually based it on a student playing every 4 minutes. Now, most of their performances will be like 1 to 2 minutes, you know? They're not playing gigantic pieces. So there's extra time in there, but that's just the way it works out in terms of having the right amount of people here, because it's not just the students, it's their parents, maybe siblings, right? So I do have to allow a little bit of extra space. So it's based on a student every 4 minutes. You definitely could go with a student every 2 or 3 minutes, but I kind of base it on the performance, and that will let you know, like, if they're playing at 3:25 even, I would have them arrive at 3. So they're arriving at the previous half hour. That just kind of arriving in blocks like this means that there are some people there to hear the music. That's the idea of it. Hope that clears that up. Oh, that's not what I clicked on. Okay, Laurie, do you or your teachers play at your parties or events? Okay, good question as well. So at concerts, at the end of year concert, we do. We play, I don't know what we're going to do this year. If someone knows a great 8 hands piece, that would be awesome. But what we have done in the past is done a trio with the 3 teachers together when we had 3 teachers. And it just worked out that the other time I had 4 teachers, the concert was online anyway, so we weren't playing together. But I don't know what we're going to do next year. Normally, all the teachers play something together, and we play at the start of the concert. I don't want to be the headline act. I want to be the warm-up performance for my students to be the headliners. So we play at the start, and we normally play together. In the mid-year one, which is the one that's like small and at our house, and we're doing batches of students essentially for a whole day, a different one of us will play at the start of each one of those. So all the teachers play something at some point, but we don't all play for everyone. Does that make sense? So just like I play for the first one, and then another teacher, teacher A, will play at the next one at the start, and then teacher B will play at the third one at the start, etc. throughout the day. And if they're playing for multiple, they could even play the same piece. It doesn't matter. We're just the warm-up act. That's how I see us. Maybe people will find that unglamorous, but that's how I think about it. Okay, nice. Any other questions? I don't think so. I think I caught all the questions. Okay, awesome stuff. On my pin the something on the something, in case you're on tenterhooks about that, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Mr. Price tomorrow, which is like a dollar store, that kind of thing. I'm going to go there tomorrow. And if they have a Halloween themed post-it that fits with one of these things, I'm going to go with that. Like if they have a witch's hat, I'm just going to buy the post-it and it's going to be a witch. But if they don't, then I'm going to go with something that is either square or round. So probably the pumpkin stalk, because it could be a square post-it. I like post-its for this rather than pins. It's just easier for little hands and not having to supervise them and all that kind of thing. So that is what I will do. Thank you all so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure as always. If you have further questions, do add them into the comments, and I will see you back here next week. Bye.